So, good morning. We're kind of doing a shuffle here. So, thank you. As you can see right now, the main speaker didn't show up. But that's okay, because our second main speaker is here, Lisa Goetsch, and she's going to be able to tell us everything we want to know about Census. But Barbara Bynum and I were having a conversation yesterday, and so I said that what I was going to lead off with this morning is that Barbara's laughing at me. What does census mean, right? I don't know. Okay. But about a year and a half ago, we were at a city council meeting, and Virgil Turner said to us, guess what? The city of Montrose now qualifies for the enterprise zone. Well, first of all, I'm saying, first of all, what's an enterprise zone? But number two, what do you mean we qualify? For some reason, all of a sudden, Montrose's population had gone from 19,900 and whatever to 20,009. And those extra 9 people threw us over that hurdle, and all of a sudden we could qualify for this enterprise zone. And that's a very important thing for businesses because they get tax credits, and it also qualifies them for employees within the first 3 years don't have to pay Colorado income tax. So it's a big deal, okay? So those 9 people, and however, somebody in the government found out we had 9 more, that worked. So, and look who just walked in. So now, are we going back to plan A? Okay. As we let Brian take off his bag and get organized.
It'll take me just a couple of minutes, sir.
Okay.
Got stuck behind some trucks.
Sing and dance.
Let's talk about our next 2 weeks programs, then we don't have to do it at the end.
Okay, let's do that. What's happening next week?
We have 2 really good programs, and I hope we won't regret that we're doing this. We try and avoid really controversial things, but next week it's reintroduction of wolves. And I know, that's what I'm worried about. We're bringing in the speaker from Denver for the pro side. And if you've done any reading on this, the Front Range is so in favor of reintroducing the wolves. They have raised over $100,000 for their cause, and the con side has raised $10,000. And of course, reintroduction is just on our side of the mountain. So we're hoping for a civil presentation. For the con side, we've got Ernie Etchart. And those of you who lived here a while know Ernie is a sheep man. Family, his father was, they're very steeped in the whole wool growers thing. So that will be the con side. So that's next week, and the week after that, we've got all 11 city council candidates confirmed, and they will be here. They're being asked to address 4 questions. There will be no time for Q&A because they're each given 5 minutes. If you multiply 5 times 11, that's the whole program. So hopefully we won't get into a lot of controversy there. They're each just entitled to say what they have to say. So in terms of being an informed voter, it looks like the next 2 weeks will really focus on that. And we hope to see you spread the word. We're already trying to figure out how to get more chairs in this room because I think it will be packed.
So along that same vein, you know, it's pretty much up for the 3 of us and Lori to come up with what our subjects are for our programs. Please help us. If you have something that you're just dying to know about, you know, let us know. or if, you know, whatever, you have a question or you know about something, please just contact one of us and just let us know, because it would be nice if we could work on that program. Yes, Jim?
He said, is this a yes or no?
I know, I'm saying no.
I'm not, oh.
Oh,
But he said
I'll
yes.
talk to you later.
I just wanted to say, I think it'd be nice to have a tour of the new county South Campus. Really forget that.
You know, I asked them about that, and they said it's basically a hallway with a couple offices,
Yeah.
and it's not worth touring. I already asked.
A what?
The county South Campus.
The county South Campus, they remodeled the front and the entrance, and it looks really great, and it looks really exciting. So I asked John Washbush about a tour, and he said, Barb, it's like a hallway with a couple offices. You'd be really disappointed. So I guess the most exciting part maybe is the outside. So, great idea. I had the same idea. It just apparently is not something that would be worth touring. So, so sometimes we don't like your ideas. No, sometimes we like your ideas. We've just already looked into them.
And understand that's only temporary. Hopefully, they'll be moving into the historic courthouse back. Okay, we're going to pretend. Oh, no, we're not going to pretend. So is there an organization that they all...
Yay!
Okay. Thank you, let's talk. Okay, Brian,
All right.
talk to us about Census 2020.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for bearing with me. I'm going to stand over here by my laptop so I can just click through the slides. So today we are actually very, very close to the kickoff of the actual census. We've been doing some preliminary field operations, doing things like address canvassing, updating our database on residence locations, all that good stuff. And we're about to kick it out into the public and start gathering the responses. So what I wanted to do today was just kind of give you a very brief kind of backgrounder on the census. I think this is probably a very educated crowd. I think you're all very familiar with what the census is. So I won't spend a ton of time on that, but there are some technical and timeline issues that we're really working hard to try and get out there in the public. So I want to put that out there. If anybody has any questions as we go and you don't want to lose it before we get to the end, no big deal. Just kind of raise your hand. I'll be happy to answer those as we go through this. So what the census is, just by show of hands, we'll kind of make this a little interactive. Who in here knows why we do a decennial census? All right, you were first, so go ahead.
It's mandated in the Constitution.
Mandated in the Constitution for?
A census, a count, an actual count of the
Mhm.
people in the country every 10 years, and Congress is in charge.
Close, yeah, I mean, it's for congressional apportionment. This is how we determine how many seats each state gets in the U.S. House of Representatives. There is, if anybody is familiar with the way they originally did it, when we were first getting started as a country, they used to just add seats as the population grew. If they continued doing that, Congress would probably have about 3,000 members in there, and we can all imagine how fun that would be. So what they did was they capped it at 435. So now when we add seats to anytime a state picks up a seat, necessarily somebody else somewhere else loses one. So for instance, Colorado, we were very close in 2010. I'm not going to speculate on whether we'll get one this time around, but unofficially, I think there's probably a very good chance of that. But if we do pick one up, we're basically taking a seat from somebody somewhere else. So you can see how it gets to be very competitive. And so every single state is putting a major effort forward to make sure that we get a complete and accurate count. We want to make sure we count everybody, and we also need to make sure that we count everybody in the right place. And that's kind of our mantra you can see there at the bottom. Count everyone once, only once. We don't want to count you more than that, and in the right place. But there are other reasons why we do a census. Besides the apportionment in Congress, how many people knew that there were $675 billion every single year that makes its way down to local communities like Montrose, based on the data that we're gathering in the census? So that's obviously a pretty big deal. And it's not just Congress that's doing their reapportionment. The Colorado General Assembly is going to be doing redistricting for the state Senate and the state House as well, based on the data that we're gathering. And it's also very important for local governments. I see a few of our local government officials in here today. They all probably are on census.gov a lot, pulling information that we've got on there to plan for things like roads, healthcare, K-12 education, all that good stuff. So obviously, the data that we gather, it kind of seems like a very straightforward, a little bit of a mundane process, but when you really start digging into how important it is that we actually gather this data and get it accurate, you can really see how important it is that we get the word out and get people to actually respond back on their surveys. And that's what I kind of want to get into now is, it seems like a very straightforward, simple process. How hard is it to actually count the population of the United States? It's actually very difficult to do that. There's a lot of technicalities that go into it. I did say, for instance, that the census that we're starting that, it's right around the corner. How many people in here know what day is Census Day? Just anybody want to throw a guess out?
April 1st.
April 1st, yeah. But we start before that. The self-response that you see here on March 12th, we are going to start sending out our census packets that include the invitation to respond, and in some instances, a paper questionnaire beginning on March 12th. Those are going to go out between March 12th and March 20th. Now, how many people in here are expecting to get a paper questionnaire when you get your invitation to respond? Quite a few people. Understandable. That's the way we've always done it in the past. We're doing it a little bit differently this year. March 12th is the first day that our online portal goes live. This is the first time ever that you're going to be able to respond back to the census online. We've actually got 3 ways to respond. I'll get to that here in just a second on a slide, but real quickly, you can do it online. There's a phone number that you can call, talk to an enumerator and do it that way. Or if you get a paper questionnaire, you can do the paper questionnaire, kind of do it the old-fashioned way, stick it in the mail, get it back into us, and complete your survey that way. What we do have, like I said, March 12th through 20th is when we're mailing out the packets. Who in here gets their mail delivery via a P.O. box? A handful of you. Now, do we send our census packets out to folks who have a P.O. box? We do not. Does anybody know why? And going back to that first slide, kind of everybody only wants in the right place. Why do we need to know where people are located in order to do the count? Obviously, you go back to that congressional apportionment, that redistricting. It's very important we know how many people there are, but we also need to know where they are. And with a P.O. box, if I want to, I can have a P.O. box over on the Front Range and get my mail delivered there. It has absolutely nothing to do with where I actually live, but I can do that if I want to. Therefore, we cannot verify with 100% certainty that if you get P.O. box delivery for your mail, that corresponds to your physical address. So we're not going to send a census packet out to you in the mail. You'll still get one, but we're going to have that hand delivered, and that's a process we call update leave, and you can see that starts on March 16th and runs through April 10th. In Montrose County, I'm going to pull a slide up here real quick. We do have an interactive map that you can refer people to that will show them exactly which area they live in. Am I going to get it in the mail, or is somebody going to drop it off? We've got a map that's publicly available that'll show everybody exactly where they live and what delivery method we're going to utilize to get them their questionnaire. Yes?
Brian, when you get an invitation in the mail to respond online, are you going to get some kind of code or something that you enter in?
Yeah, very good question. If anybody didn't hear, the question was, do you get a code to enter in online? The answer to that is yes. We're going to assign a user ID that corresponds to each physical location, and you'll enter that in. It'll take you to the questionnaire, you complete it, and you're good to go. I'm actually going to pull up here in just a second a slide that shows what a sample invitation letter looks like that everybody's going to get, so you can kind of see what to expect. So again, March 12th through 20th, mail out. March 16th through April 10th, hand delivery. March 12th is the first day you can respond. April 1st is Census Day. That's kind of something that a lot of the folks that we're working with, we kind of use that as a kind of a motivator, maybe put together some events to try and get people excited about completing their census survey and getting that back into us. And then I've also got on here this April 2020 group quarters. We do a little bit different for folks who are in kind of congregated living facilities, so think assisted living facilities, college dormitories, things of that nature. We'll do an in-person enumeration in that manner. So what we're going to do is reach out to the managers of those facilities and work with them on the best dates and times to actually go out and conduct the interviews that way. But generally speaking, most people are just going to get one at their residence and complete it that way. Now, here's another question for you. Somebody just throw out the answer. Is the census voluntary, or do you have to do it? You definitely have to do it. When you get your invitation, it will say so right on there. It is required by law. You do have to participate in the 2020 census. Now, what happens if you don't complete your survey, or if you only answer one of the questions and then send it back in that way? Does anybody know the answer to that? likely what we're gonna do is either follow up via a phone call or a knock on the door. And that's what we call our non-response follow-up, and that's what this May 13th date is talking about. If you do not respond by May 13th, or if you send an incomplete questionnaire back in, we will follow up and try to get a completed questionnaire from you. A lot of people ask, is there a penalty for not doing it? Technically speaking, yes, a fine can be levied. Historically, I and everybody else in the Census Bureau, we've never heard of that actually ever being assessed. But most people really don't want us knocking on their door 1, 2, 5 times trying to get a completed questionnaire. So that's the most likely outcome with that. If you don't complete your questionnaire, we will follow up with you and try to get a completed questionnaire that way. And the reason why we do that is we have to have all of this stuff gathered back in. The last day to respond, does anybody have any idea when that is? July 31st. So we run from March 12th when we start through July 31st, and that's the last day you can respond. We have to have all of the data back. We have to have a quality check tabulated and sent over to the administration by the end of this year, because they then have to turn around and get it back to the states by April 1st of next year so that they can start doing the congressional redistricting process. So this is a slide that shows what the sample invitation letter is. It's a letter from the director explaining what the census is, why it's important. You can see where your census ID is, and that'll be included. Pre-signed, you don't have to come up with that on your own. Just enter that in. The portal is going to be at a website called my2020census.gov. You can go to it now. It just has a nice little message on there saying, please come back later when you want to complete your questionnaire. But if you want to go check it out, you can definitely do so. What happens if you lose your census ID? You know, you have it, you open it, you're excited to do it, you get busy, and then it accidentally gets thrown in the trash. Or you just for whatever reason never got one to begin with. Are you then able to go ahead and go online and complete your census questionnaire? Does anybody know? Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to have this user ID. It's easier to use your user ID, and it's one of the safeguards that we have in place to prevent redundant duplicate questionnaires. But if you need to, there will be a link below where you enter that ID in, where you can just click and put your address information in. We just need to know where folks are located. So if somebody loses their questionnaire, fear not, you can still do it. You just got to answer a couple more questions before you actually get to the survey. Like I was saying, when talking about the different delivery methods we've got. If anybody wants to, this is actually kind of a fun website to go to. It's called our Type of Enumeration Area Viewer. If you get on Google and just put in Census TEA Viewer, it'll pull this right up. This is just a screenshot of Montrose County. They're color coded. Anybody that is in an area that is going to receive the questionnaire in the mail, you're in the blue shaded area. If you're going to have it hand delivered, you're in the tan shaded area. So you can see there's quite a bit of tan shaded areas in Montrose County. One of the things on this that doesn't really take into account, it doesn't show where public lands are. There's a lot of Forest Service and BLM and some Park Service in Montrose County. So a lot of that's going to show up in these areas. But this, like I said, is a screenshot. When you get onto this website, you really can drill down to a very fine level of detail and find out exactly what area you live in. So if anybody's curious, as you're out talking to your friends and neighbors and saying, hey, there's going to be 2 different ways you'll get your questionnaire in the mail or hand delivered, and they're wondering, well, I'm not sure which area I'm in, they can go off of, you get city style mail delivery, you're probably going to get one in the mail. Or if you get P.O. Box, you're going to have one hand delivered. But again, they can jump onto this website and just drill down where they live and see exactly what type of area they're in. And we've got another one. This is called our Mail Contact Strategies Viewer. And again, same thing, just Google that, Census Mail Contact Strategies, and it will pull up a map that looks very similar. Like I said, in a lot of instances, when you get the mail out, since we're kind of pushing people toward the online option, most people who get one in the mail are not going to get a paper questionnaire. And that's probably going to throw some people off because we've always had a paper questionnaire in the past. And if you want to know what area you're in, this is the viewer that you want to send people to. If you look at the purple shaded areas, that's what we call internet first. So if you get one in the mail and it's got your invitation letter with your ID code on it and you don't see your paper questionnaire, that's because we're trying to get you to use the online option. Again, you can still call somebody on the phone and do it that way, if that's your preference. But the online option has a couple of advantages to it. One, it's far less expensive for us to do it that way than it is to do paper questionnaires. So we're saving the taxpayer quite a bit of money by doing it that way. And we're also going to be able to gather real-time response rates back. So if people aren't responding, we're going to be able to see that on a daily basis and start shifting our outreach efforts to those areas that are not responding and try to motivate them to do so. But you can see there's quite a bit of green in Montrose County as well. That's called internet choice. And so those are folks that are still going to get it in the mail. But we do recognize that even though it's 2020, the internet connectivity in a lot of the Western United States especially is just not that great. And we don't want people trying to go online and unable to complete their census and getting frustrated and just not doing it. So we will include a paper questionnaire in those internet choice areas, which again, those are the green shaded. And you can see there's quite a bit of Montrose County that falls under that. So again, kind of getting a little bit complex. Does anybody have any questions so far on how they're going to get it and what it's going to look like? All right, very good. Again, going back to the 4 ways to respond. Again, there's online, phone, paper questionnaire. For those folks that don't get one initially in the mail, you'll still get some people that are more comfortable doing it that way. They will get one eventually. We do follow-up reminder mailings, and if they wait until about mid-April, we're going to do a 3rd reminder mailing. So we're really going to go out of our way to try and remind people, hey, if you haven't done it, please do so. But we will include a paper questionnaire for folks who didn't get one on the front end to eventually do it that way. So if you're talking to some family members and they say, I don't want to do it online and I don't want to talk to anybody on the phone, just tell them, hang tight, you'll eventually get one paper questionnaire in the mail. On the phone and the internet, one of the things that we run into, and you may have some folks that you're interacting with, where English is not their native language and maybe they feel a little bit uncomfortable in trying to do the questionnaire in English. We do have online and over the phone the questionnaire available in English plus 12 other languages. Online is very easy. You just mouse over the language you want, click it, it'll translate the entire questionnaire over to that language. And we're also going to have dedicated phone numbers corresponding to all those languages that you see in that left-hand column. So if somebody speaks, for instance, French is their native language, they call that number, they'll get an enumerator who's fluent in French, and they will conduct the questionnaire in that manner. So if you ever do come across somebody who says, I want to do my questionnaire, but I'm not comfortable enough with English, again, that's one of the things that we're trying to get out into the public to let them know. We've got language assistance in English plus 12. And then when we get to the in-person interviews during that non-response follow-up, we've got over 60 languages that they're going to have flashcards that our enumerators are equipped with to help guide people through doing the questionnaire in that manner. So we really do have a pretty comprehensive non-English language assistance that we do for the questionnaire. This is what that, again, the internet self-response. So like I said, right now it says, thanks for visiting, please come back later. When it goes live, this is what it's going to look like. Again, you'll enter in your user ID. All those on the top. It's a little bit fuzzy, I apologize. It's a screen grab that didn't blow up very well, but all those options on the top are the different languages that folks are going to be able to click on and complete the questionnaire. Don't need to do the YouTube video. All right, we're going to have to do a manual go around here.
You can show it on the big computer if you watch it. Like
Oh, that's all right. I'll just skip around it. And all right. So this is a very common question that we get. What questions are you even going to be asking us? And what questions will you not ask us? So I wanted to put this together and kind of go over, well, what does the questionnaire actually look like? We do have kind of a 10 minutes to complete your questionnaire motivational that we do. It really is not difficult to do the 2020 census because there's not that many questions on it. If you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see all the questions that we do ask. Just really quick, are there any on here that people are a little curious about why that's on there? I mean, generally when you talk to people, they understand, well, yeah, you need to know how many people live here. We get that. Why are you asking all this other stuff?
Owned or rented is a good one.
Okay, yeah, that is a very good one. And actually, some people are like, what do you need to know that for? Do you have a guess on why that's on there? Anybody else? That's a pretty good economic indicator of a community. We do other surveys that gather much more detailed economic information, but if you're wanting to know how well the economy of a local community is doing, the rate of home ownership versus rentership is actually a pretty decent indicator. It's not very precise, but it is a pretty good overall indicator of how healthy a local economy is. And so we have certain laws that have directed us to gather some of that information, and that's an easy way to do it. So that's why that one's on there. How about some of the other stuff? Who knows why do we need to know race, ethnicity, gender, all that good stuff? Does anybody have a guess on that? Because this is kind of getting into some of the questions where people are like, this is getting a little bit personal. Why are you asking us this stuff? It's not because we're curious and we just want to know. There's actually a very valid reason behind why we ask these questions. Anybody have a guess on that? We've got, for instance, laws like the Voter Rights Act. Again, going back to why do we do a census? Congressional apportionment. What has historically been a little bit of an issue, not just in this country, but virtually any country that does geographic representation? What have people tried to do and get very creative with if they think that then maybe there's a demographic out there that they want to underrepresent? Gerrymandering. So we have laws in place that prevent illegal gerrymandering of congressional and state legislature districts. And if we don't know where these, I'll get to you, hold on just one sec. If we don't know where these demographics are located, there's no way to enforce against that. So that's why these questions are on there. So, yes, sir, go ahead.
From the standpoint of census, how do you differentiate between race and ethnicity?
That's a very good question because it's one where it gets used very interchangeably, commonly. So race is kind of more of like a biological kind of a question. So Caucasian, African American, those sorts of things. But to use as an example, for instance, the ethnicity question we've got on there is, are you of Hispanic or Spanish origin? So as an example, if you've got somebody who is from the Dominican Republic, who is black, what's their race? It would be black, African American. There's kind of a multiple choice options that people can put on there, but are they also Hispanic or not? They are, yeah, Dominican Republic, that's a Spanish origin. What about somebody who's the exact same race who's from Brazil? Would they answer yes or no on that ethnicity question? Are you of Hispanic origin? Correct, no. And if somebody says yes, we're not going to contradict and say no, you're not. But that's kind of to get to your point on what the difference is. Brazil, that's a Portuguese historically. So that's kind of the differentiation. So if you do get people who are a little bit confused by that, that's the difference. Ethnicity is kind of more of a cultural category, and race is more of the biological category. Any other questions on the, oh, yep, lots of them. All right, go ahead.
So, the kind of a big question here is, what about interviewing legal or non-legal residents?
Mm-hmm. So on that, we do not have a citizenship question on the questionnaire, nor do we have anything about legal residency status. We count residents. The way that the law is written is if you're living and working in the United States, we do count you. So that's not a question that's on there, and because it's not a question that's on there, it's not something that should ever come up during the interview process. We just won't ask.
And Americans that are not living in the U.S. are not counted?
No, they are. But if you've got, for instance, the residency criteria, if you've got family members who are in the military and they're doing a tour of duty overseas, or working, for instance, in the State Department and they're living overseas, there's a separate process that we do to count those folks. We do have, if anybody's curious about what those residency rules are and how you count yourself, there's a Federal Register notice that people can go check out. Generally speaking, and actually it's a good segue onto that because I don't have a slide with that residency criteria. Generally here, what we're going to run into more often than not are folks that might have more than one location that they own. So if you have two homes, if you have a home in Montrose County and you've got one in Florida, where do you count yourself? Because you're not supposed to count yourself twice. This is actually a pretty good exercise I like to do. Does anybody know the answer to that? That's one of the requirements we did. If anybody didn't hear that, where were you on April 1st? Before you get to that point, say you have two homes, it's where your primary residence is, so where you live and sleep most of the time. So there's a 6 months plus a day rule. So if you're here 9 months out of the year, Florida 3 months out of the year, you count yourself here. If it's the flip, then you would count yourself at your residence in Florida. If you don't have a residence that you can determine 6 months plus a day, then you default to where was I on, or where was I on April 1st?
Wouldn't that depend on where you're gonna vote?
No, actually, we don't count having to do anything with where you vote. It doesn't have anything to do with where you pay your taxes. It's where you physically are located. And so your primary residence is where you spend most of your time. But again, if it's 20-something couch surfing among a bunch of different houses, which happens, and there's not anywhere, you're 3 months here, 2 months there, so on and so forth. It's where were you on April 1st? Okay.
So now I thought I knew the answer, but I guess I want to know for sure. So my daughter, who's in college, who is a dependent, who is registered to vote in Montrose, but is in college in a different state, how do we count her?
That's a very good question, because it's a very common circumstance. Based on what I just said, what do you think the answer is?
See, I think on what you just said, I would have changed it to her out-of-state location versus her home.
You're correct, because how long is she in school?
More than 6 months.
She's been there probably about 9 months, so that would be her primary
So she
residence.
fills out a whole different census then?
Yeah, so she lives on campus. That'll fall under that group quarters that we do. So again, that's the college dormitories. Off campus, their household will get a questionnaire just like you do. She completes it at that household, not where you are. So don't put her on there, because you'll count her twice.
My question is, do you count the homeless?
We do. Same thing, we've got a different process for doing that. So we will, anybody that's living in a shelter, that falls under group quarters. So we've got a process that we do for that. For folks that are kind of living, we've got, because we're the federal government and we love acronyms, transitory non-sheltered outdoor locations, or TNSLs. So that's places like, yeah, exactly. If somebody is finding themselves in a situation where they're homeless, if they're staying in a parking lot or a park or something like that, we do have a couple of days where we kind of do a point in time count. And we actually have quite a bit of practice doing this, because HUD does homeless population counts on a pretty regular basis. So it'll be virtually the same process we do for that. We'll send enumerators out to those locations and conduct in-person interviews. So I thought I saw more. Yep, go ahead.
I read an article the other day that apparently who is the head of household is a hot topic this year, but I didn't really understand the implications of that. Could you explain that?
Yeah, exactly. So there's not really a definition of head of household. So what we've got, when you get your questionnaire, if there's more than one individual living in that residence, there will be somebody designated as person one. Usually whoever is kind of considered head of household kind of assumes that role. It's not, the only differentiation with that is you'll fill out all of these questions for person one, and then you'll do it for person 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And it will ask, what is the relationship of person 2 to person 1, person 3 to person 1? And that gives us an idea of what that household looks like. So if it's a family unit and dad is person 1, then person 2 might be spouse, person 3, child. And if they're non-related, you can put roommate or something like that down. We just need to know kind of what the relationship is so we can get an idea of what kind of a household that happens to be.
So on Tuesday from 10 to 12, last Tuesday from 10 to 12, I got 3 calls that said that my social security number has been compromised. As I was sitting here 5 minutes ago, I got another call saying that my social security number has been compromised. You have up there, 2020 census will never ask for. Do you have any potential scams out there to look at? Because I mean, this is, I can just imagine a scammer sitting there saying, okay, well, this is another way I can get information and compromised data.
Yeah, we actually are very much concerned with preventing fraud and scams. So thanks for bringing that question up. That's why I've got this on the your right-hand side over here, questions that we will never ask, because people will try and take advantage of the census to defraud people. They do it with Social Security, as you've experienced. I've had those very same phone calls where they're telling me, my Social Security number has been compromised, we think there's illegal activity, there's a warrant out for your arrest if you don't call us right now and pay the fine, et cetera, et cetera. So again, going back to, on the census form, it does state that you have to do this, and there could be a fine levied if you don't. So somebody could feasibly call somebody and say, hey, you didn't do it, we're assessing a fine, there's a warrant out for your arrest, pay us now and we'll go ahead and get that taken care of. If somebody receives a phone call like that, that is not us. That we would never do something like that. It does not cost anything to do the census. I can see somebody trying to scam and saying, and asking just the questions that are on there and saying, hey, please also include your $20 processing fee payment. We don't charge, so if somebody gets something like that, that's a scam. That is not us. All these questions that you see over here, we're not gonna ask for somebody's social security number for any reason whatsoever. It doesn't matter if they filled it out, didn't fill it out, there's no reason for us to ask that. It's illegal for us to ask that. So if somebody claiming to be a census employee asking for a social security number, not us. We are not ever gonna ask for financial institution information. We're not gonna ask for anything on behalf or opposed to a political candidate or an issue. It's a completely nonpartisan process. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. There will be bad people out there who try to take advantage of this. And we've got on our website this exact same information, but we're trying to get it out there. If somebody is asking you for any of this information that you see up here on the right-hand side, that is not us. Do not provide that information.
So we have a really strong Crime Stoppers organization in Montrose.
Mm-hmm.
Have you reached out to them and tried to be proactive so that people will know what's coming down the road?
Yeah, we've been working with local law enforcement primarily. So internally, we've got our precautions in place, but we do work with local law enforcement. And we encourage folks, if they do get somebody to, just the same as what somebody's doing with Social Security, try and get some information that you can provide to law enforcement and notify them of some suspected fraudulent activity. And on that, actually, is a good segue into these couple of next slides. A lot of people, again, with this potential for frauds and scams and all that good stuff, a lot of people are worried about, well, what is the Census Bureau doing with my information once they collect it? Are we allowed to provide people's responses to any other federal agencies? Anybody know the answer to that? Absolutely not. We cannot, by law, provide that information to other federal agencies. We can't provide it to law enforcement. We can't provide anybody's answers to anybody else for any reason whatsoever. If we do, we're subject to that 5 years in prison, $250,000 fine, not a slap on the wrist. So if you get people who are worried about, oh, are they taking care of my answers once you get them? Absolutely we are. We're required by law to do it. And if we don't, there are very, very strict penalties for any violations of that. This is one of the common questions we get, again, going back to how do I know if it's a legitimate Census Bureau survey or employee? We get a question, do your enumerators have uniforms? We do not. They are plain street clothes, just like I'm dressed today. But there are ways to identify them. Again, this is information we've got on the website if you want to provide that around. But they will have a picture ID badge, which you can see down there. It's got their photograph, their name, the Department of Commerce seal on it. There's a phone number on the website. If somebody is still suspicious of the identity of somebody, they get the name off the badge. They can call us and say, hey, I live in Montrose. Joe Smith contacted me and said there are census enumerators. This guy actually worked for you, and we will verify if that's an actual enumerator or not. We'll also have that tote bag with the census logo on it, and they'll be equipped with a laptop or a tablet. So this is generally speaking, if somebody like this comes to your door, they're probably one of us. But if somebody does not have that badge ID especially, and they're claiming to be one of us, we're telling people, hey, don't work with that individual, because either A, they lost it and they're not supposed to do that, or it's not one of our people. This is just not necessarily, I just want to get this out there that we are working with our local partners, including the local Complete Count Committee here in Montrose, to set up what are called mobile questionnaire assistance. That's anything from providing a good Wi-Fi signal for people to come do. Again, that's one of the questions we get on the online option. Can I save it, come back to it later? The answer to that is no. We do require that you complete the entire survey in one sitting. And again, that's a security protocol that we've got. But if somebody's got kind of glitchy internet access and they get to question 5 and it keeps cutting out on them, it'll make you start all over again to go back and redo it. And again, that could cause some frustration for folks that are trying to complete their questionnaire. So we have some of our partners that we're working with that maybe provide a couple of computer stations that have good, secure internet access that people can complete their questionnaire that way, or maybe providing some volunteers who are educated and can answer questions about the census. Like you said, going back to this gentleman in the front row about, well, what's the difference between race and ethnicity? Some folks might have some confusion about, well, what are you asking for exactly? So we've got some of our volunteers that might be available to provide some guidance in that manner. We do, as you can probably guess, Doing a census requires a small army of individuals. I always use this example because it's a good illustration, although I don't really care for the analogy too much. But the only thing that the federal government ever does that's a larger mobilization of manpower than the census is going to war. So again, I don't want to compare the 2020 census to going to war, but I just give you an idea of how many people we need to do to conduct this. So we're continually recruiting folks. I put this on here. If you are interested, or if you know anybody who is interested in doing some part-time work for us, make some extra cash, pay off a credit card, save up for a vacation or something like that, please do encourage them to go to the website and apply. And here is my contact information, and I've also got my colleague Amina up there. So if anybody wants to contact either one of us, if you've got some questions after this, please feel free to do so. And with that, if we've got any other questions that I can answer, we'd be happy to do that. Yes, ma'am.
How do you control against double counting?
So there's a couple of manners. So the user ID is one. You can only use that once. So once you've done your survey and submitted it, that user ID is no longer usable. We do ask for some locational information. So if, for instance, we get a questionnaire here, and then we get one in Missouri that has the exact same name, same age, same ethnicity, same race, all that, it might flag it. And we will follow up with a household to say, hey, this looks like it might be a potential duplicate. Did you accidentally do this twice? And so we will have follow-up methodologies that we do. So there'll be flags where if it looks like we've got the same individual, we can follow up.
Do you do comparisons against tax returns or something?
No, just against other census returns, yeah.
So I could make up people who live in my house?
I mean, theoretically you could, but why would you do that? So, again, if it's anything that looks like it might be a duplicate or something suspicious, we collect, we already know where the residence is, so we can do a follow-up or gather a phone number to do follow-up and ensure that somebody didn't accidentally do it twice. Yeah.
I assume if my spouse fills it out and he lists me as number 2, I still need to fill it out?
No, the good question. So if anybody didn't catch that, do you fill out a different survey per individual, or do you do one per household? Per household, yeah. So if you do it together and you're included on one, you're counted once, only once, in the right place. So we should be good to go at that point. But that is a good question to bring up because you have complex households. Maybe you've got 2 families living in the same house. If you have an instance like that, does anybody know, how would you approach that? Does each family do a questionnaire, or do you do one and just include persons 1 through 10 or 12 or however many? Per household, exactly. So it doesn't matter. So we're counting how many people live in a location. Now, if you've got, for instance, maybe a historic Victorian house that's large and it's been subdivided into 3 apartments, each of those, that's a discrete housing unit. So each of those will get their own survey. But if it's, just got a family that lives on the 2nd floor, but it's the same house, they all will be on the same questionnaire.
Thank you. I think we need to move on to Lisa here.
All right. Thank you.
I feel like Vanna White, but I feel like I should say, if you haven't met Greg Story is the IS director for the city of Montrose. Thank you.
All right, sorry, technical difficulties, it's always that way, yeah. Well, thank you for being here. I'm Lisa Goetsch with Montrose County, and I want to kind of let you know what the message that the county and the state are trying to put out regarding the census. So the state of Colorado is pushing the census to make sure everyone gets counted, and their tagline is "Everyone Counts." So Montrose County decided to extend that, so everybody counts in Montrose County. If you want to, I don't care. All right, go for it. So this is what we're trying to convey. We want everyone to know that it's important. You've already heard this from Brian. It's important for representation, distribution of federal funds, state and local decision making. It's easy and it's safe. So first we want to talk about the reapportionment, and Brian had already hinted on this, but here is a graphic that shows that hopefully we're going to be gaining representation, and maybe Florida will lose one, we'll gain one from there. But but in addition to this, I'm sure you all know that locally the numbers that come back and where they're at are going to be used to create our state representative districts, so that will change. They're also used to redistrict our commissioner and city council districts.
What are the colors?
So basically it's the change number. So red would be losing 2, purple is losing 1, the gray is not changing, green would gain 1, the light tan would gain 2, and the dark is gaining 3, is what they're projecting. All right, so here's the important information that we are really concerned with is federal funding that the state is getting back because of the census and our numbers. So this number up here, $13 billion in 2016, that is what the state received from the federal government in 2016, which comes out to about $2,300 per person for some of these programs. Now that's just in 2016, so you can see why it's important for Colorado to make sure everybody gets counted, because we want to be getting our share of the federal funds. So also, I want to talk a little bit about how the funding is used here locally. So one of the things that was created, I think it was in 2018, are the opportunity zones. And we have 2 of those in Montrose County. We have one in the West End, and the other one is here in Montrose over by where Colorado Outdoors is. And so that is important to us locally. We also have grant funding that we receive. And I want you to know that not all of this grant money that's coming back from this federal money comes to Montrose County. It goes to different organizations. The city has put in grants for money that comes out of this fund. And most recently, there was an article and a press release that they just put out that they received $267,000 approximately from the Community Development Block Grant. And that block grant money comes from this funding. And that was to help with, what was it? The Center for Mental Health. And also, they just recently approved putting in for another grant that is from this same funding for work with, I think that is the Boys and Girls Club. Right, thank you. So also, in addition to this, a lot of the money goes to our Health and Human Services Department. One of those programs is helping Colorado's needy families find work. Also, there are grants that have been applied and received by Region 10 and the town of Natarita. Some of this money also goes back to our college students for Pell Grants. So it is very important that we be sure that we get all of our people counted so that we can get our share of the funds for our people. Another reason that it's important is for businesses. And not that businesses are going to be getting necessarily the federal funds, but they are using those numbers and information that the census collects so that they know, do I want to come to Montrose? What are the demographics like? Should I open a new business here? A lot of that information is used for new businesses too. All right, so we were approached by Brian and we were asked to create a complete count committee. So in Montrose, we started that, and these are a lot of the organizations here in Montrose that are now part of the complete count committee. We have the city of Montrose, who has been helping us with events that we are planning to get the word out. Town of Olathe is going to be putting information in their newsletter. I believe the city is going to be putting information in the utility bills, and hopefully we might get a banner over Main Street. Montrose County is going to be heading up marketing. We're getting the word out, billboards, radio, that type of stuff, and we're also working with other entities on events. The Montrose County Housing Authority is on the committee, and they're going to be working with their managers of their buildings to be sure that posters are put up to make sure people know how important it is. Montrose County School District is working with us to inform their students and send home notes to the children. Region 10 is involved because of their work with the elderly. And the Hispanic Affairs Project is a big part of the Complete Count Committee and the grant that we went for with the Complete Count Committee to target the Hispanic community. Montrose Regional Library District is also a member, and they are going to be offering their computers. So if people do need to complete the census online, they'll be able to go to the library to do that. And the League of Women Voters. So Nancy is here, and she's been helping us promote this and get the word out, so we appreciate that. We also have the Center for Independence that joined our committee so that we can target people that are in need of a different way to complete the census because of a disability. And the West End Family Link Center on the West End. All right, so part of the Complete Count Committee was working with DOLA. DOLA put a request, or not a request, but they had a grant proposal that we needed to do, or wanted to do, so that we could get some of the funding to reach these hard-to-count communities or populations. And these are what are defined as hard to count, but in Montrose County, it's pretty much limited to the Hispanic, Spanish-speaking populations, the elderly, and the homeless. And so the Complete Count Committee is trying to get the message out to these committees with our grant. So we have funding to advertise. We have funding to create local events and get the word out, spread the message. So what we're trying to do is get the message out, traditional advertising. So I know there's been radio ads. Has anyone here heard an ad on the radio yet talking about the census? You have? Awesome. What about in the newspapers? There's been a couple articles. I think there was one in the Daily Press, and there might have been one in the Mirror. Did you see? I think it was an editorial in the Daily Press. And then we'll be doing the utility bills, we'll be doing billboards, and then we'll also be doing a little bit of marketing on social media. Has anybody seen an ad on social media yet? YouTube, maybe? So I've seen those. I've talked to people that have done those. The county hasn't put those out, but somebody is. So I don't know if you've ever watched YouTube. You get the ads before you get to see your show. Well, we're seeing census ads on YouTube. Also, the county has been putting out information for the census on our Facebook page, and we've worked with Brian to get job advertisements out there and let people know that they can apply for jobs. But we also want to do direct contact, and this is one of the most important things, especially trying to reach our hard-to-count populations. So what we want to do is we want to connect with local organizations, faith-based leaders, people that are connected and trusted to those people that may not complete a census, so that we can try to let them know how important it is to complete the census. So that's the idea of the Complete Count Committee, the reason for the grant, and why the state of Colorado is like, okay, we need to let these people know that it is important, it is safe, please do it. Okay, I just had to throw this picture in. I found this from the census. I'm like, it doesn't really belong here, but I had to throw it in there anyway. So we are trying to coordinate local events. So Nancy talked about the meetings that the League of Women Voters is putting on. There is an event on the 1st that is being coordinated by HAP, happening out in the Tortilla Flats area. The county is also going to be involved at other local events at the event center or high schools, where we can just have a presence and be able to give out information and publicize the importance of this. And that's all that I have.